When you think about March Madness, what do you think of? Maybe it's a Cinderella run, like Loyola Chicago to the Final Four. Maybe it's the crowning of a future great, like Steph Curry's 33-point game for Davidson. Maybe it's a huge upset, like 16-seed UMBC beating 1-seed Virginia. I'll tell you what I think about. I think about Kris Jenkins' buzzer beater to launch his team to the 2016 title. This moment is etched into my brain. The entire play leading up to it, the shot itself, the call of the announcer.
Jenkins for the championship!
But we'll get to all that, because while I could recite to you the full sequence by heart, I didn't know much about the full context behind this moment. What led to the national championship game being tied at 74-74? How'd these teams get here? How'd these players get here? So I went digging to learn more. And what I found was much more profound and interesting than I could have expected. Today, I want to share with you what I found and tell you the full story of the greatest buzzer beater in March Madness history. So we know this guy with the ball is Kris Jenkins, but who else is on the court right now? For Villanova, they've run out with a fairly small ball lineup of Josh Hart, Phil Booth, Daniel Ochefu, and Ryan Arcidiacono. Unless you're a die-hard college basketball fan, you might not recognize many of these names other than probably Josh Hart. Phil Booth and Daniel Ochefu both had extremely short NBA careers, only appearing in a handful of non-summer league games. Ryan Arcidiacono never really got his NBA career going, jumping around teams both in the NBA and the G League. But we'll talk more about him later. But Josh Hart, one of Villanova's top players and a 2016 All-American, he currently starts for the New York Knicks, one of the top teams in the NBA Eastern Conference. And Hart isn't the only current Knick who's wearing Villanova Navy. Both Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges were also on the 2016 Wildcats. They're just not on the court right now, having been subbed out of the game earlier. Another guy on the Nova bench, Dante DiVincenzo, was also a New York Knick up until his recent trade to Minnesota. Villanova in 2016 was a college team that had 4 different players who will go on to be key parts of great NBA teams. So they must be the favorites here. But actually, Nova came into this game as a slight underdog to the University of North Carolina. The Tar Heels are one of the greatest and most successful men's college basketball programs in history. A fixture of the top ranks of the NCAA, the University of North Carolina over the last 6 decades have averaged more wins per season than any other program. They've appeared in 21 Final Fours and they've won 6 titles. Many future great NBA players and coaches have spent time in Chapel Hill, including the great Michael Jordan. MJ spent his college years with UNC and led the team to the 1982 National Championship, hitting the game-winning shot. And fittingly, he's here on the sidelines to cheer on his alma mater. So it's not that uncommon for one of the teams in the NCAA title game to be wearing the Carolina powder blue, and this year is no exception. The 2015-16 Tar Heels began the year ranked number 1 in the preseason poll, as pundits deservedly expected great things. They won their first game handily, dropping 91 points, and they didn't look back from there. The team, led by seniors Bryce Johnson and Marcus Page, put together an elite season, ultimately ending with a 33-7 record, including 14 wins in a very competitive ACC. They suffered a few upsets throughout, including a loss to conference rival Notre Dame that was on ESPN College Game Day, a game that incited some doubts about the team's ability to perform in big games, but hey, it's college basketball. Upsets are just part of it. And the team went on to squash those concerns after winning the ACC championship game over a great Virginia squad. So, going into the NCAA tournament, UNC was undoubtedly one of the top contenders, and they were awarded with the top seed in the East region. The Villanova Wildcats do not have the same pedigree that their opponents do. Before 2016, Villanova had only reached the Final Four on 4 occasions, making the title game twice and winning just once, in 1985, over Georgetown and Patrick Ewing, behind one of the greatest shooting performances in college basketball history. And hey, that coach of the 1985 team is in the arena today. All considered, the Wildcats aren't historically seen as one of college basketball's elite programs. But this year, they are undoubtedly one of the elite teams. Villanova began the year ranked at a respectable 11th, but after putting together some wins, they jumped to the top 8. After losing to Buddy Hield's Oklahoma and then Virginia behind a big performance from Malcolm Brogdon, they fell down in the standings. But then Josh Hart and the Wildcats started piecing together wins and then more wins. And as the teams ahead of them suffered some upsets, Villanova kept climbing. Then they were ranked number 1 overall. By the end of the regular season, they held a 27-4 record and were the top-ranked team in their conference, and they were rewarded with the number 2 seed in the South region of the NCAA tournament. However, Villanova had developed a reputation for doing really well in the regular season, but then falling earlier than expected once they got to the tournament. In fact, in ESPN's Bracket Challenge, Villanova was more often picked to get upset in the first round than they were picked to win the tournament. But once they got to the tournament, the Wildcats actually came alive, looking near invincible, beating their first 4 opponents with an average margin of victory of a massive 19 points. Their defense was stifling opponents, they were scoring on all levels, and Josh Hart especially was shining. The team was balanced and deep, and after beating the number 1 overall seed Kansas in the South Regional Finals, they were in the Final Four. On the other side of the bracket, North Carolina was similarly cruising, also putting up double-digit margins of victory, with Bryce Johnson and Marcus Page leading the team to 4 comfortable wins in a row. So the Final Four was set. Villanova was up against an Oklahoma team that had already beat them during the regular season, and UNC was to face a 10-seed Syracuse, who was having a great Cinderella run that would promptly end, as they were dispatched by the heavy favorite North Carolina Tar Heels. Opposite them, Villanova put up their best performance of the tournament, exploding for 95 points to get revenge over Oklahoma, beating them by an insane 44 points. And so, the Villanova Wildcats and the University of North Carolina Tar Heels were meeting in the finals of college basketball's biggest tournament. As was fitting between these two elite teams, it was a tightly contested game. Neither team led by more than 7 throughout the entire first half. The standouts of the first half were Joel Berry III of North Carolina, who hit multiple three-pointers to lead the game in scoring, and Phil Booth of Villanova, who finished off the half with a pull-up jump shot that was set up by Josh Hart chase-down blocking a layup attempt from Justin Jackson. Following the break from halftime, Villanova came roaring back, reclaiming the lead from the Tar Heels behind some quick points from future Knicks teammates Brunson, Hart, and Bridges. As the game progressed, neither team was able to separate themselves from the other by more than a few points, but it was Villanova who kept pushing the momentum. With about 8 minutes to go, Kris Jenkins got the ball at the top of the key. He pivoted a few times, didn't see a pass that he liked, and so he just decided to launch it. This shot is a nice glimpse into Kris Jenkins' mindset. He was once quoted saying, "I think every shot's going in," so that one was no different. And in this case, he was right, swishing the 3 to give his team a 7-point lead at 60-53. However, UNC was the top seed of their region for a reason, and they weren't going to let the Wildcats just waltz to a victory. Behind guard Marcus Page, the Tar Heels led a comeback that included a corner 3.
Yes. They are tough with the inbounds pass, hit and follow.
Then some scrappy defense to force a Villanova turnover, then a Bryce Johnson 2-pointer. Suddenly, the lead was just 1 point with 1 minute to go. Phil Booth took a trip to the line and converted both free throws to make it 72-69 Villanova. On the other end of the court, Marcus Page missed a layup but fought to get his own offensive board through a sea of Wildcats and put the ball back in to make it 72-71. Then Josh Hart was fouled with about 14 seconds left, and he calmly put in both free throws to again make it a 3-point game. This was back and forth. The teams went to a timeout to prepare for the critical next possession. North Carolina had the ball, and they needed 3 points to tie it up. The Tar Heels inbounded the ball, their season on the line. But pause. Aren't we here to talk about Kris Jenkins' shot for Villanova? Well, yes, we are. But there's something incredible that happens before we're going to get there. As UNC runs up the court, things get a little bit messy, and whatever play they drew up is clearly broken. So they do the reasonable thing and they give it to the hot hand. Marcus Page receives the pass, takes 2 quick dribbles, and as he lifts up to shoot, realizes that the Villanova defender's hand is in his face. So he somehow, while still in midair, lowers the ball below the defense and then re-raises it up to shoot.
It's Page off balance.
If nothing else happened in this game. This double clutch, miraculous three to tie the game at 74 would be the shot that goes down in history. This is the kind of shot that you might try and make to beat your friends at a game of horse. Not the kind of shot you try when down 3 in a championship game. But Marcus Page just somehow scored it. His teammates, UNC fans, and Michael Jordan all erupt as the game is tied at 74. So it's now Villanova's turn to prepare for a critical upcoming possession. We don't know exactly what Jay Wright is telling his team here, but based on what happens right after this timeout, we have a pretty good idea. See, Villanova have a go-to play call that they run in situations where they want something consistent and practiced. It's a 3-man full court play with the players following each other up the floor, fittingly called the Nova. Villanova has seen success with it before, most notably in the 2009 Elite Eight. With just 5.5 seconds left, Scotty Reynolds, the primary ball handler for the Wildcats, gets the ball early in the floor and drives up as he is trailed by 2 open teammates while the other 2 wait in the wings. In this instance, Reynolds found an open lane to the basket and scored the bucket to shoot his team into the Final Four. So as we return to 2016, Villanova is going to rely on their tried and true setup. With 4.7 seconds left, the Wildcats' primary ball handler, Ryan Arcidiacono, is passed the ball from the inbound and begins to dribble up the court. Just as it was in 2009 with Scotty Reynolds' game winner, all signs point to the Villanova guard with the ball being the one who is about to cover himself with glory. See, Ryan Arcidiacono is Villanova royalty. He grew up in Philadelphia, a short drive away from the Villanova campus, the college where his parents met and his father Joe played football. He began his basketball journey at a young age, and at a basketball camp when he was in the 7th grade, one of the coaches there predicted that he would one day play for the Wildcats. That man was Jay Wright, current coach of the Villanova men's college basketball program. And this prediction did, of course, end up being correct. As Ryan's college basketball career began, it was with Villanova. He quickly became one of the team's most beloved players, following in the footsteps of many family members before him that had built a reputation of being part of the very fabric of Villanova. As we get into the 2015-16 season, Ryan Arcidiacono is a senior and the cornerstone and leader of the team. He's described as a point guard whose best skill is winning basketball games. We've seen this throughout the tournament as Ryan notched double-digit points in every game of the tournament so far to lead his team to the finals. And that's why he is the man that Jay Wright trusts to carry up the ball in this crucial moment. This Nova play against UNC goes a little differently than the one we saw succeed with Scotty Reynolds. One of the driving attackers in the Nova play, Ochefu, sets the screen to give Arcidiacono some room, while Kris Jenkins continues to play the follow and stay open role. This is where we see Ryan Arcidiacono's game sense come into play. A lesser and maybe more selfish point guard would probably try to just drive straight to the basket through the defense. But this is someone who has spent his entire life and career with Villanova, the team, in mind. So after passing half court, he assessed the defense, and instead of driving into a forest of Tar Heels, Ryan passed it backwards to Kris Jenkins. For the Villanova forward, rising up to take this shot likely seems simple in comparison to what it's taken to get him here. When he was a young boy, beginning to learn the game of basketball, Kris Jenkins' mother, Felicia Jenkins, a former college basketball player herself, took her son to an AAU tournament in Baltimore. There, Kris played with another young boy named Nate Britt, and he met Nate's family. The two 10-year-olds formed an immediate bond, which ended up being very timely, as the Jenkins household would get complicated over the next few months. Felicia and Kris's father separated, and shortly after, Kris's baby sister, Corey, got sick and tragically passed away. While Felicia was spending time in the hospital with Corey, Kris was filling his days playing basketball and spending a lot of time with his newfound friend Nate and Nate's family. Soon after, Felicia Jenkins got a job coaching basketball, but this job was in South Carolina. Her son's AAU team was still in Maryland, and even more pertinently, so were Nate and the Britt family. Felicia saw how valuable the Britts' disciplined approach to life and basketball was for Kris. She saw how much potential Kris had in the sport, and she saw just how much Kris loved being around his friend and their family. So, in what she has since called the most difficult decision of her life, she asked the Britt family to take Kris in as an adopted son while she went to South Carolina. Reportedly, when Nelody and Nate Britt Sr. met to discuss it, it was not a long conversation. They of course answered that they would. So, Kris Jenkins and Nate Britt became brothers, and Kris got himself another family in Maryland. As we know, what comes after this is that Kris Jenkins becomes a top high school basketball prospect, is recruited by Villanova, and is now playing in the national championship game. But what of his brother? It's almost exactly the same path. Nate Britt becomes a top high school basketball prospect, is recruited by the University of North Carolina, and now sits in Carolina blue as he watches his brother rise up to take a potentially tournament-ending shot. As he does, both of Kris Jenkins' families are on the sidelines. His mother, Felicia, is there, as well as the Britt family, with Melody Britt wearing a custom shirt that she stitched to support her two sons, with both Villanova Navy and Carolina blue on it. As the brothers face off in the national championship game, it's a testament to how both Kris and Nate have developed into great players and people amidst unique and often difficult circumstances. This game is already a triumph of hospitality, openness, selflessness, and care for all involved. But only one of the brothers can triumph on the court. After an incredible, odds-defying tournament run, and a back-and-forth game that already saw one of the wildest shots ever to tie it at 74, with Michael Jordan and thousands of ardent fans looking on, Villanova run the play that's worked for them before. One of the most beloved players in Villanova basketball history selflessly gives the ball up, and as Kris Jenkins rises up to shoot, he is looking to complete a win over his adopted brother and in front of his families, both adopted and biological. Not to mention, he is shooting what could be a game winner with just 1 second left in March Madness. We are just one shot away from the end of the NCAA championship and the conclusion of all of these overlapping and interconnected storylines. Here is that shot.
3 seconds at midcourt. Jenkins gives it to Jenkins for the championship.
Kris Jenkins' Wildcats teammates surround him. Jay Wright is stone cold, as if he knew that the Nova play and the shooting hands of Jenkins could only result in a game winner. Felicia Jenkins and the Britt parents are in tears as their son runs over to celebrate with them as a family bonded in a way that very few are. The Villanova fans are raucous, UNC fans are stunned, and the sports world is alight. We just got to witness a buzzer beater that concluded a thrilling game that crowned Villanova as the college basketball national champions, capping off an improbable and near perfect tournament run. This is the kind of situation that you dream about being in when you're in your driveway as a kid. Make the shot and win the title. It doesn't get more March Madness than that. UNC's anguish wouldn't last long. The next year, they would win the NCAA title. Some of the guys from the 2016 Villanova team, like Josh Hart, would quickly begin their professional basketball careers. Others, like Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges, would wait a couple more years and win the title again with Villanova in 2018 before then going to the NBA. And still others didn't really get their NBA careers going at all. But in making this shot and being a part of its story, Kris Jenkins and the 2016 Villanova Wildcats were immortalized in sports history. But this was just one page of the unbelievable story of sports in 2016. I hope that you enjoyed the video. Over the next few months on this channel, I'm going to be covering the biggest sports stories from 2016. You should subscribe to tune in. It's going to be a lot of fun. Next up is the Summer Olympics. I'll see you there.